Welcome to the Medisynergy podcast. I'm Imogen, an A-level student, here to bring you the best people with knowledge and insight on how to get into med school, how to become a doctor, and to help you decide whether a career in medicine is for you. I'm here today with Yusuf, who is currently studying medicine at Oxford and is a Widening participation medical student. So keep listening to hear more about that later. Welcome to the Medisynergy podcast, Yusuf. It's great to have you on here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's get started. How did you decide that medicine was the right thing for you?
Okay, so yeah, I think that's kind of like the standard question I always get asked at like placement as well. So it definitely wasn't a thing of like, oh, since I was 5 years old, I always wanted to go into medicine. But I think it was more of a gradual thing. I think from work experience, even working at pharmacy, working at Boots, working at Specsavers, slowly, I thought, you know what? A career in healthcare would be for me. I'd enjoyed that emotional satisfaction, the intellectual curiosity of applying science to disease, and also the diversity in terms of patients and diversity in terms of diseases. So medicine allows you to combine all of those different fields, especially medical science, understanding how the body works and how the body goes wrong. And that's definitely something that motivated me to go in and still motivates me as a medical student now.
Oh, wow, that's a great answer. I'll definitely be taking notes of my medical interviews when I get asked that, because it is a very common question. It does come up a lot. And you talked about emotional satisfaction. I don't think I've heard of that one before. A lot of people say it's very gratifying, and obviously you're doing good. So yeah, emotional satisfaction. I really like that answer. And you've said that about how a lot of your family were in medicine, and that's really interesting. Actually, I don't think I know anyone with that many medics in their family. So going into medicine was kind of a given for you, not totally, but a little bit. And so once you decided, okay, medicine's the right thing for me, how did you decide on Oxford as a medical school?
So I think the thing about medical schools generally is you definitely what makes the most, I guess the most important question is one, deciding, do you actually want to do medicine? And are you sure that's definitely going to be for you in terms of the career and also in terms of how competitive it is? And would you be willing to put that sacrifice, especially how as a degree, it's 5 or 6 years long. And then on top of that, it's a lifetime career, really, 30, 40 years. Once that's established, yes, you can then think about teaching styles. And I guess for me, I did enjoy or at least the idea of Oxford in terms of actually being able to have that strong medical science foundation. Even at that time, I still wanted to, in year 13, I still wanted to be a doctor. I still wanted to be a clinician. I know you might have heard of loads of Oxford medical students want to be researchers, for example, but that wasn't me. I always wanted to be a clinician, but actually I was able to have that strong medical foundations, as we said, understanding how the body works normally, that's called physiology, and then understanding how it goes wrong, pathophysiology. And I really enjoyed having that strong underpinning, that strong research foundation, so you can still think like a doctor, even as a clinician.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So you thought that Oxford was the right place to facilitate that research and that kind of going further.
Yeah, exactly, because you can allow to think like a scientist, and that's something that they really have those strong principles on. And also the fact, of course, of the tutorial system, and that's a big sort of USP, a unique selling point of Oxford, in the sense that you really have this basically one-to-one or two-to-one interaction where the tutors actually really get to know you as an individual, as opposed to a number potentially when you're just at a lecture theatre when it'd be quite easy to get lost. So if you're struggling at Oxford University, you won't be for very long because the tutor will be there to support you and help you. And it could be a case of going over something you didn't quite understand in lectures. Or it might be actually you answer something perfectly well, in which case you can go through the research side of things, or in terms of the clinical relevance of proteins, for example, if it gets misfolded, it could cause prion disease or whatever it may be.
Okay, yeah. I really liked what you said there about not being a number. So I've been at schools before where you just feel like a number on a spreadsheet. They're just trying to get you to a certain level. They don't care about who you are. So it's really nice to know that you actually get support, especially from the tutorial sessions. So that's really good to hear.
If I
Yeah.
may, there's also like devil's advocate side of it, and there definitely is that side as well. The fact that actually you're going to have much more delayed clinical contact because the first 3 years are preclinical, so all of those years are basically tutorial, lecture-based, practical-based, research-based. It's only from fourth year beyond that you're in sort of let loose into hospitals. So whereas my peers, they were in hospitals from day one, and that's a big difference, I'd say. And it's worth thinking about: would you be able to stick it out until fourth year or not?
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting that you mentioned early clinical placement, because obviously you can see what job you're going to be doing in the future, so you kind of get a bit of motivation, a bit of taste of what you'll actually be doing in your career. And without that, it's probably quite hard to get motivated, and 3 years is a long time without having a feel for what you're going to do. I was just saying, I've only ever spent 3 years at one school, so being 3 years is quite a long time for me, and not actually changing it up that much I think would be quite difficult. So would you say that was quite a significant downside of going to Oxford, or like what did you think about that?
The first 3 years, because they are very much preclinical, and that is what Oxford is unashamedly academic about. It is effectively a biomedical science degree that you're doing for the first 3 years. We share lectures with the biomedical students, and that is very much the focus of it. So, of course, if you do want to go into research, or if you do enjoy the idea of medical science, Oxford's for you. But if it's not, then it's something worth thinking about. Whereas, I guess on the contrary, from fourth year beyond, you sort of get this payoff, because all of a sudden, everything that you've seen in textbooks all of a sudden just clicks, and you can start taking histories. And from taking a history, which is basically asking patients questions to try to narrow down what you think the differential could be, what the underlying disease could be, probably about 90% of the time you could actually figure out what's going on purely just on taking history, regardless of taking bloods or examinations. And that's a cool feeling, to feel like a detective.
Yeah, okay, that's good to know it's not been too much of a barrier. And we've spoken about this on the podcast before, actually. In your first year, if you go straight into placement, you just don't really know what you're doing. You just stood there being a bit of a lemon. I was speaking to a friend actually the other day. She said it's more clinical exposure rather than clinical experience, because you can't really do anything because you don't know anything. So yeah, that's interesting that you've brought that up. And you mentioned also about how academic Oxford is, and everyone's obviously very intelligent to go there, and it's a kind of certain style that it attracts potentially. So would you say you ever get a bit of imposter syndrome while at Oxford?
Yeah, so I think imposter syndrome is very common to have at any medical school, purely because of the fact that if you are applying to medicine, you're most likely going to be top of your class, and you would have been probably since primary school or secondary school. So all of a sudden, you go to this new university, this new place, you move out from parents, and all of a sudden, everyone else is also really smart. And then all of a sudden, you might not be top of the class, and you might be average or less, or whatever it might be, right? So then you're thinking, oh no, and it can be really, really easy to sort of compare yourself to other people in those ways, in those sorts of different achievements. But actually, I guess I've been really fortunate that I've just had really, really great friends, a great support network, and ultimately, it is about staying in your own lane and recognizing that everyone has their own sort of topics that they're going to enjoy more than others as well, and that they're going to excel at more than others. But it can be very common to feel that, especially at first. But I think recognizing and accepting that is really important.
It's really good that you've recognized it, but you've not been too affected, and that's probably helped because you recognize it. You think, okay, this could happen to me. I'm not going to let it affect me too badly. And obviously, having tutorials, good support work network, that's really handy. And I think it's obviously unis, but it's the same with colleges and schools, really. If a school or a college or a uni is well renowned for its high academic importance, and kind of people go there because it's academic, it's also quite well known for its to be less pastorally helpful, not as supportive. So it's really good to hear that Oxford do value you as a person and really try to help you. That's really good to hear.
And even actually, when I was applying to Oxford, I thought, right, that's it. I'm waving my social life goodbye when I start. That's it. I'm working in libraries 24/7. But that's just not true. And universities, not only just Oxford, but any medical school, is what you make of it. And it's about how you're going to be able to manage your time and what you want to prioritize as well. So ultimately, it's down to you as an individual to sort of take ownership and sort of steer the ship however you want it to go.
I actually went to an Oxford open day in the summer, and I've spoken about it a lot actually because it was quite shocking to say the least. And so we were all put in this big lecture hall, everyone wanting to study medicine, and it was kind of a Q&A with these couple of fourth year medics at Oxford, and we could ask them questions, and someone put their hand up and said, what have you enjoyed most about your time at Oxford? They've been there a good 4 years, like that's quite a long time, and they could not think of anything, like nothing to say. There was and that was a massive red flag. It was really awkward. Everyone was just looking at each other like, can they not think of one thing to say? And they've been chosen to speak on the open day as well. I was just I was, yeah, it wasn't great. So I need to know, is there something that you've enjoyed? Because that is very important.
I think we all, as medical students, it's very common for us to like complain or whinge about certain things. But overall, I've absolutely enjoyed it. The tutorials are a huge academic highlight for me in third year, particularly when so that was like during the COVID year, and that's when all of a sudden they created this whole new module all about COVID-19, and we had these tutorials. The tutorials are basically academic conversations with experts in their field about COVID-19, about pathophysiology, why some people get COVID worse than others, how the COVID vaccine works or vaccines work, how you can actually treat COVID-19 in different ways. And that was super cool. And I remember that so well. And I remember one of our tutors said, sorry guys, I wasn't able to mark your essays. I was working on the COVID vaccine. I was like, you know what? Fair enough. I'll let you off. So like you just realize that these guys are just like at the top of their game. And that's such a great feeling to have. And then to be able to ask them questions about where do they think it's going in the future?
That is so cool. You can just talk to your teacher and they'll be like, oh, yeah, sorry, I was just working on the COVID vaccine. Like, oh, okay, we'll let you off that one. We'll let you off this time. That's really interesting. And it's good you're learning about it because, as a member of the general public at the moment, who does get COVID? Why do these people get COVID? Why does it pick and choose? And there doesn't seem to be any correlation. And I think we would all love to know who and why everyone gets COVID. So, yeah, I think it's really good that they've taught you that at medical school.
And I think that's what I've really enjoyed, how dynamic and flexible the curriculum is, how you can really choose what you want to do, especially in third year in your intercalated degree. So your intercalated degree is like an extra degree that you do at med school. That's why some universities are 6 years on, because this extra intercalated degree. And what that allows you to do is specialize at Oxford. You have to do it within medical science, but anything within that is up to you. And when I was going through research projects, I felt like a kid in a candy store because I had all these different choices. I thought, right, you know what, let's do a bit of sleep, a bit of personalized medicine, a bit of cancer, a bit of HIV, COVID. So you're really able to sort of drag and drop your own curriculum in third year. And that's something that's really enjoyable.
That's so great that you can tailor it to your interest. And I think that's really appealing actually, because a lot of the time, especially in school and college, a lot of your learning is out of your control. So it's nice that in third year you get a bit of, tailoring it to what you actually want to do. That's really, really nice. And we've spoken previously about preclinical, clinical years, imposter syndrome. So what else would you say is a barrier you faced at medical school? Because I feel like the media and potential other medical students can say a lot of negatives. So what are the barriers you face, but also how have you overcome them?
I think I thought there would have been more barriers. So coming from a working class family, coming from a state school, I thought, you know what, I wasn't sure if Oxford would be for me, but actually I really found so many different societies that enable you to really sort of find your people and get involved with as much as you want to. So whether that be the African Caribbean Society, the Islamic Society, also for me in terms of powerlifting, those are sports that I've really, as societies that I've really enjoyed. To clarify, I was not sporty at all in year 12 or in sixth form, but I just got into powerlifting and I was just hooked, and I've been hooked ever since. And that's something that we've been able to compete against Cambridge. So I'm sure you're aware of the Oxford Cambridge like rivalry. So we have varsities each year, which are like competitions in whatever sports, and that's always fun. So we competed against Cambridge last year, and again doing the same this year, and that's always so much fun.
You know what? Society sounds like such an amazing way to make friends, get involved in university, and just get stuck in and really kind of optimize your university experience. So I think it's really good that you're part of a lot of those, and other people on my podcast have been really involved in those. And also, you're doing something outside of medicine, especially with powerlifting. It's quite different. It's not really using your mind; it's more using your body, and very different to medicine, which is really good. And a lot of people encourage that. So with powerlifting, what do you do as part of that society?
Yeah, so for powerlifting, basically it's equivalent to basically weightlifting. So it's all about it's a strength-based sport. So it's about squat, bench, deadlift, and it's such a supportive community where everyone just gives you tips. We're able to compete in local competitions, national competitions, or against other unis. And it's just so much fun. I think the reason why is because you've just got this progressive like gain in strength that you have, and that to me is so like fulfilling. It's like a dopamine hit. It's like boom, yeah, we've made that target. And also, it's also a lot about mindset as well, because when you're there on that platform, you're like, oh, I don't know if I can lift it, but then you surprise yourself. And that's always such a great feeling. And with everyone cheering you on, I think it's just such a wholesome sport.
Oh, that's great. That's great you all cheer each other on because, as you say, it's mindset, mental health as well. It's really good to get that support, do something outside of medicine and just clear your head. Really, really, really good thing to do. And so, moving on a little bit, you are the founder of Aspiring Medics. So, tell us a little bit about what that is and what your role is within Aspiring Medics.
Up, please. Yeah, so basically, it all started in 2018, so a week before Freshers Week. I set up the Aspiring Medics. It started off as just a group of friends from my local region, which was Hertfordshire, and we helped students to get into medicine. And through the years, it's actually expanded and just become this thriving community where we help students to get into medical school through one-to-one tutoring and our online courses as well. So that's in terms of every single step of the medicine application process. So entry exams, work experience, interviews, personal statement, academia, GCSE, A levels, basically every step within that process. And that's just been so, so fulfilling to really help students to get into medical school, because we know there are so many barriers at the moment. We know that talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not.
Yeah, honestly, it's a great resource. I mean, I'm obviously on the WhatsApp group, and it's just a really nice, good community of students. And obviously, you post things on there, helping people with interviews, current medical news. Actually, that's a really interesting one. Videos on help with getting into medical school. And another thing I found is it's actually really easy to use because a lot of resources like that, they're a bit less easy to use. It's quite hard to find things on there. So I think it's really, really appealing to any aspiring medics. So do check that out, guys, if you're wanting to get into med school next year or the year after. And it's quite interesting to see how some medical students, they've just stuck to the med school content, they've just done the uni thing, maybe a few societies, but then some medical students have gone on to start companies, found initiatives, all these other things, start their own society. It's really interesting to see how those two things separate. And we've spoken about that, and I'm going to continue. So obviously you have aspiring medics, powerlifting, and then other societies and your medical content and as part of the degree. So how do you manage it all?
Yeah, it can definitely be a lot at times, but I think it's all about managing your time effectively and having that time management discipline. I truly think that if you're able to be as disciplined as possible, that means you can be as free as possible. And particularly in terms of Google Calendar, if you speak to any of my friends, they'll tell you I literally live my whole life on Google Calendar. I like color code it for my academics, for powerlifting. So if you time box your time accordingly, if you can set those recurring meetings or whatever it is in terms of time boxing it then means it's very, very easy for you to follow. And as long as you're able to prioritize and be effective with your revision, with your studying, that means that you're able to be as best as possible. And actually, I find that it's not that I'm able to manage at medical school despite the fact that I do powerlifting or the aspiring medics. I actually think it's because I do both of them, because it allows me to have that, as you mentioned, this outlet in terms of stress with powerlifting, and also in terms of that opportunity to sort of express myself creatively with the aspiring medics, whether it be in terms of our webinars, our YouTube, or our blogs. And that in itself, in combination, basically gives you these different identities. It's sort of diversifying yourself, almost like an economy, right? Because if you're too dependent on one thing and that one thing goes wrong, if your whole life is dedicated to just academia and you don't do as well as you want, it can be very difficult to bounce back from that. But if you diversify your identity and you have all these different hobbies, then it makes it a lot easier for you to stay sort of motivated in all those different disciplines.
You know, I love that. I think that's absolutely great. You're not doing it despite the other stuff, you're doing it because the other stuff, and that stuff helps you to have a break so you can carry on and do the kind of harder medical course, obviously. And many people have mentioned it before on the podcast and just in general, it's really good to have more than one thing. Don't make medicine your whole life. Have other things, because if that goes wrong, you've got other things to fall back on and you're not just a robot, a medical robot. No one wants that. So with that, and we've spoken a lot about aspiring medics, I think it's so, so great. But as the founder of that, and as an aspiring medic myself, it's really interesting to hear all these top tips. What would be your top tips on how to get into med school?
Definitely. It's all about being proactive. It's all about being as proactive as possible when it comes down to different opportunities, particularly in making the most out of different online courses, YouTube videos, blogs out there at the moment, and setting yourself those deadlines and being very consistent and disciplined when it comes down to your preparation, whether it be for entry exams, whether it be for your personal statement, redrafting, whether it be in terms of your interview knowledge, and practicing as much as possible in the format of whatever exam or interview you're getting, and to practice in those conditions is going to be really important. And thirdly, absolutely, of course, I'm going to be biased, but check out the Aspire Medics for sure. The website, the YouTube channel, our online courses, they're super useful. And the whole purpose of them is to basically have this pool of wisdom from all these medical students of basically mistakes of lessons that we thought we would have wanted to know in your position as year 12s, as year 13s, to help you guys get in.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really great advice. And I can say from my own personal experience, consistency really is key. Just keep going. There's lots to do when applying to medical school, as well as your A levels on top of it, or you just need to stay consistent and you'll get there in the end, hopefully. And being proactive, you mentioned there, focusing on deadlines, aspiring medic. Seriously, guys, go check it out. If you're watching, listening, check it out right now. It'll be in my link tree, or you can look it up on your normal search engines. So another one I really love there is learn from others. And I think that's so important, because why would I learn from my mistakes when I can learn from someone else's mistakes? There are so many people that have been there before me and before any other year 12s, year 13s. So I make my own mistakes when there are people I can learn from. I think that's such a great top tip. And so thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been so great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. And you guys are doing an absolute great job, so keep it up.
And that's all today from the Medisynergy podcast. Thank you for listening, and join us next week for more episodes on how to get into med school, and make sure to send to any other aspiring medics.